the English newscast on Future Television. I'm Yumna Nawfal, and these are today's top stories. The Future movement holds an internal vote across Lebanon to elect delegates to the movement's general conference that will be held on November 26th and 27th. Family and friends fill the St. Nicholas Church in Beirut's Ashrafiyeh as they say their final goodbyes to one of Lebanon's most beloved singers, Milhem Barakat. And Syrian state media says militant fire poison gas at a government-held area of Aleppo caused 35 people to choke. Some things rebel deny. The Future movement is holding an internal vote across Lebanon today to elect delegates to the movement's general conference, which will be held on November 26th and 27th. Members will cast votes to elect 1,168 delegates at the movement's departments in the various regions and at the Biel complex in Beirut. Former Prime Minister Saad Hariri had pledged in June to conduct a critical internal re-evaluation inside the movement in light of the results of May municipal polls. He has expressed hope that the conference will represent a new constructive chance in addressing the aspirations of the popular base, especially youth and women. Apparently referring to future minister turned electoral rival Ashraf Rifi, who was accused of using a sectarian rhetoric to win Tripoli's municipal vote, Hariri said in June, "Politics in Lebanon have given me lessons in lying, maneuvering, incitement, and the manipulation of people's sentiments. But my upbringing taught me to be honest, frank, and loyal, even if that comes at my expense." So the world and Lebanon is mourning today. Family and friends filled the St. Nicholas Church in Beirut's Ashrafiyeh area as they are saying their final goodbyes to one of Lebanon's most beloved singers and composers, Milhem Barakat. Barakat passed away 2 days ago. The renowned singer, at the age of 71, was battling an illness. He was one of the few Arab singers to perform in colloquial Lebanese Arabic, a stylistic choice that he defended throughout his career. The musical icon also launched an acting career, appearing in several films in the 1980s and participating in many of the acclaimed Rahbani brother musicals. When the musical legend wasn't singing, he was composing songs and collaborating with famed artists such as Ghassan Saliba, Majid al-Rumi, Najwa Karam, and Karol Saar. Syrian state militants say they fired a poison gas at a government-held area of Aleppo, causing 35 people to choke, a report that a rebel official is calling wrong. The Syrian Observatory for Human Rights, a UK-based organization that reports on the war, said it had confirmed reports of suffocation among government fighters in 2 frontline areas shelled by rebels, but did not know if chlorine gas was the cause. State news agency Stana said shells containing poison gases had been fired at the residential district of Al-Hamdaniya. It did not report any deaths. However, state television quoted the director of an Aleppo hospital saying 36 people had choked as a result of the shelling with chlorine gas. Coming up next, Dr. Kanta Ahmad joins us from New York to discuss the U.S. election. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Democratic presidential nominee Hillary Clinton is calling on the FBI director to give full and complete facts, responding to a letter that the Federal Bureau of Investigation Director James Comey had sent out to Republican members of Congress, in which he announced that the investigation into Clinton's emails are still ongoing. Clinton went on to say that her rival, Republican Donald Trump, is doing his best to confuse, mislead, and discourage the American people. Joining us live from New York is a member of the Council on Foreign Relations in the United States, as well as an associate, am I saying this right? An associate medical assistant at the State University of New York. Dr. Kanta Ahmad, thank you for being with us.
That's the Associate Professor of Medicine. It's my pleasure.
It's been quite a journey up until this year's U.S. presidential elections, and you recently penned an article for The Guardian where you say that as an American Muslim, you have no one to cast your vote for. You say Clinton's complicity in the drone wars of the Obama administration has made it impossible for you to support her, and that a vote for Trump would legitimize the demonization of Muslims such as yourself.
That's exactly right. It's been a discouraging election cycle for all Americans. Let's not just say just for Americans who are Muslim. I think this is one of the filthiest campaigns I can recall, and certainly one that I followed. And the last comment that you just made, that Senator Clinton or Secretary of State Clinton is blaming Trump for exposing this debacle, really she brought it on herself. But the level of discourse, the level of vitriol, the extraordinary populism and nationalism that this election has revealed has been breathtaking. Many Americans cannot believe that Donald Trump has garnered over 40% of the population's support. I think that's very frightening. And we must make clear, whatever the outcome of this election, those sentiments, isolationism, anti-immigration, ultranationalism, those are not going away. So this is discouraging not only for Muslim Americans, but for all Americans. Regarding the drone policies, because those really affect Muslims everywhere in the Muslim majority worlds, particular countries, Pakistan, Afghanistan, Yemen, Libya. This has been a major issue, of course, initiated by George Bush, but absolutely accelerated and expanded by President Obama and endorsed by would-be President Hillary Clinton without any protest. My concern in this election is that almost no real issues have been discussed by the population in any substantial way.
I hear what you're saying, and I want to get to the drone issue in just 1 second, because I know that that's also a very personal issue for you. But in your article, you go on to say that you're not interested to vote neither for the Green Party nor the Libertarian Party, Jill Stein or Gary Johnson. But, you know, President Barack Obama and First Lady Michelle Obama have gone to such length to try to explain as they campaign that a protest vote or a non-vote could get Trump elected. What do you feel about that?
I mean, I understand that, and it's not just these politicians who are saying this, our president and our first lady. Here in New York, where I live, this is a largely Democratic state. I mean, it always votes Democrats. So not voting, I could understand how that could translate as support for Trump. But my feeling about voting, and I'm a British citizen and have voted in elections in Britain too, is that it is the only thing I have is my name and my endorsement. This is the only thing of value I have. I cannot endorse either parties, and therefore I must sit out. Now, that does not mean, as many of my readers have written to me, that I could not vote for other candidates which we refer to as down ballot.
Right, because the presidential election is not the only thing on the ballot. And should, for example, Trump get elected, then what about the Senate? What about the other officials that are in New York State, for example?
I think that's exactly right, and I certainly I'm abstaining mostly from the presidential candidacy. I think that's a very reasonable point. Regarding the other two candidates, Gary Johnson and Jill Stein, realistically, they have absolutely no chance. There's also a third candidate that I didn't mention, Evan McMullin, a constitutionalist. They realistically have no chance of obtaining power.
No, it's not, right, but it wouldn't be, Dr. Ahmed, it wouldn't be so much for them to obtain power as opposed to it being more of a protest vote, because you wouldn't be voting for either Republican or Democratic nominee.
I understand that, and I understand that. My point of the argument that I made in The Guardian wasn't actually about voting, though many of the thousands of readers who read it made it about voting. It is about the fact that we, one of the most powerful democracies in the world, are faced with two impossible choices that are going to determine not only the outcome for our nation, but incredible impact on the global playing field, most critically for the region that you and your viewers are in, the Middle East. And I think that's unacceptable.
Right, and I want to bring the talk to this, because the most important thing that struck me in the article was, and I know you and I have spoken a little bit about this when we wrote and exchanged emails, about the Muslim identity and this rise of xenophobia in the United States. I know you moved to the United States in 1992, and you said the identity has changed from then till now, and today people seem a lot more intolerant, and we see this rise of this fear being spread out, probably exacerbated by the way that some campaigns have been running, and as well as people being a lot more racist, a lot more violent in their approach. So how does it fare now?
Let me qualify what you're saying. Let me qualify what you're saying, because I have lived and served among American people for decades. And the vast majority of Americans that I meet every day are embracing and supporting and very protective. I have many American patients that I look after that are in enforcement, that are in military, that are in certain government agencies who support me in every way. So we cannot paint the entire country with this brush. But certainly, post 9/11, relations towards Muslims changed. Every war that we've had initiated by the United States, Afghanistan and Iraq, has changed our position in the United States and changed the way Muslims are viewing. And this campaign, the presidential campaign particularly, coming right at a time when we've had Charlie Hebdo in Paris and the Bataclan in Paris, we've also had other major episodes of terrorism, has completely transformed the cipher that is a Muslim American.
Well, how do you see it? How do you see it? You know, I know we don't want to. I know for you it's a little inconceivable right now, but if Trump is elected, because it is close, I know Clinton is leading in the polls right now, but it's getting closer, and the whole FBI and email saga just resurfaced again and is probably going to affect the campaign a week until election, 8 days actually until election day. Should Trump be elected president, or should Clinton be elected president? And Trump specifically, because I know it's been much more controversial vis-a-vis Muslims with his campaign. How do you see it going into the future? And if there is, and you do see this growing problem, what can we do to tackle it?
First of all, it's not inconceivable that Trump could become president. I watched Brexit happen, and nobody believed that could happen. I think we may have the same dynamic on November 8th, and I don't think that's hysteria or exaggeration. If Trump becomes president, he becomes my president too, and the country has to work to unify. But I think perhaps one of the biggest factors that sharpened and, in fact, disappointed many Americans, myself included, is the United States' attitude to Syrian refugees. I don't think that will change irrespective of who becomes president. Hillary Clinton claims that she will take tens of thousands of more Syrians than have been already, but subscribes to the same so-called vetting policies as Donald Trump. I think it's a hugely damaging phenomenon that is independent of the outcome of the election. Remember, when I was referring to the Muslim American as a cipher, we are barely 4 to 5 million in this country of 320 million. Less than 3% of the world's Muslims live in the United States. So we are a very unknown entity, and assumptions about us are made entirely through a largely uninformed media.
And this is where people such as yourself come in to try to also make people aware that this is happening and it's ongoing, and how do we tackle it? So you're saying the media probably should play the biggest role in kind of shedding light on the differences and to try to make it more moderate, perhaps?
I think the media has had some of the greatest impact on humanization of Muslims, even as I work with many progressive and conservative media outlets to change that. Information that is very welcomed by our anchors in New York, by producers in New York, certainly. There's a hunger for reality. But when all of the images of Muslims lately in the last 2 years have been of ISIS, or prior to that have been of Al-Qaeda, and there is no contrasting image provided, you can easily see how a nation that feels insecure can unite behind xenophobia.
All right. Well, thank you so much for being with us, Dr. Quanta Ahmad. We look forward to having you again, because this is going to be a long dialogue. That's one thing for sure, especially as the election looms in. Thank you. And on that note, we close our bulletin for today. Thank you so much for watching, and have a good week ahead.